You gave something up, not in a crisis, not in one dramatic moment. Quietly, over time, you made a calculation that felt necessary at the time, and then you moved forward without looking back. Years later, decades later, you're still living with that choice, still arranged around the absence, still functioning perfectly in a life that has a room-shaped hole in it that no one else can see. 3 rooms. One of them is yours, not the one you choose now, the one you chose then, when the world asked you what you could live without, and you answered. The locked room, the empty room, the crowded room. One of them contains what you sacrificed, and you're still sacrificing it. Carl Jung understood something most people never accept. Survival isn't free. Every strategy you build to keep yourself safe requires payment. And the payment is always the same. A part of yourself. Not the part you hated. Not the part that was causing problems. The part that was alive. The part that wanted. The part that would have taken up space. You didn't kill it. You just put it somewhere you wouldn't have to look at it. A room. And you've been walking past that room ever since. Not consciously. Not deliberately. But the architecture of your life is built around not opening that door. This isn't about regret. This isn't about going back and choosing differently. You can't. The moment is gone. The circumstances changed. The person who made that choice doesn't exist anymore. But the room does. And whatever you put in there is still there, unchanged, waiting, not because it wants to punish you, because you never went back for it. Today we're going to find out which room is yours. Not by guessing, not by hoping you're the interesting one, by recognition, by that uncomfortable tightness in your chest when something true gets said out loud and you can't pretend you didn't hear it. Before we open the doors, you need to understand how this works. Most people think sacrifice is noble, that giving something up means you were strong enough to let it go. Jung didn't see it that way. He saw sacrifice as a trade. You gave up one thing to protect something else. And the thing you protected felt more important at the time, more urgent, more necessary. Maybe you gave up wildness to protect stability. Maybe you gave up your needs to protect connection. Maybe you gave up stillness to protect yourself from feeling. Whatever you traded, it worked for a while. It kept you safe. It kept you functional. It kept you moving forward when everything felt like it was falling apart. But here's what nobody tells you about survival trades. They don't expire. The thing you gave up 30 years ago is still gone, and you're still living like it needs to stay gone. Like opening that door would undo everything you've built. Like the person who made that sacrifice would be betrayed if you went back now and asked for it back. That's the room, not a metaphor, a structure, a psychological architecture you built to contain the part of yourself you decided you couldn't afford. Let's open the first door. The locked room. This room has a door, a heavy one, and a lock you installed yourself, not to keep people out, to keep something in. Inside this room is everything you decided not to feel, not just sadness, not just anger, everything that felt too big, too unpredictable, too dangerous to let out into your carefully controlled life. If this is your room, you already know you've been the one people call steady, reliable, the one who doesn't fall apart, the one who handles things. And they mean it as a compliment, but you know what it actually means. It means they've never seen you lose control, because you don't, not in public, not in private, not even when you're alone. Somewhere in your history, losing control stopped being safe. Maybe someone around you was volatile, and you learned that the way to survive volatility was to become its opposite, to become still, measured, predictable. Or maybe you lost control once, and the consequences were so devastating that your psyche made a decision. Never again. Never again will I let that part of me have access to the surface. So you built a room, and you put everything dangerous inside it. The rage, the grief, the desire, the part of you that wanted things you weren't supposed to want, the part that would have burned the life you were building if you'd let it breathe. And you locked it, not temporarily, permanently. Years passed, decades. The lock got stronger, the door got heavier, and at some point, you stopped thinking about what was inside. You stopped wondering if it was still there. It's still there. You know this because of what happens in your body when someone asks you how you really feel. Not the polite version, the real version. Something tightens, not in your throat, deeper, in your chest, like a door that's been closed so long the hinges rusted, and now it won't open even if you wanted it to, and you don't want it to. That's the cost of the locked room. Control became your identity. Letting go feels like dying. You don't cry easily. When you do cry, it's brief, controlled, over quickly. You don't rage. When anger comes, you process it internally, rationally, efficiently. You don't want recklessly. When you want something, you've already evaluated it, justified it, made sure it fits into the structure. This looks like maturity. It's not maturity. It's a survival mechanism that calcified. Think about your relationships. The people closest to you have said some version of this to you at some point. I don't know what you're feeling. You never let me in. It's like you're behind glass. And they're right. You are behind glass. The glass is the door. And the door is locked. Not because you're cruel. Because opening it feels like chaos. Like everything you built would flood. Like the feelings inside that room have been building pressure for so long that if you crack the door even slightly, they'd blow it off the hinges. So you keep it locked, and the cost compounds quietly. You're safe. You're stable. You're in control. And you haven't felt anything real in years. Not because you can't feel. Because feeling requires opening the door. And opening the door requires admitting that the thing you locked away wasn't dangerous. It was alive. The second door. The empty room. This room doesn't have a lock. It doesn't need one. There's nothing inside. You cleared it all out, piece by piece, year by year. You removed everything that was yours until the room was completely empty. And then you called it selflessness. If this is your room, you already know. You spent your entire life making space for other people, their needs, their feelings, their dreams. You became the one who holds the space. The one who adjusts, the one who makes room, and it felt like love, like purpose, like the thing you were made for. Jung would ask you a different question. He wouldn't ask if you love the people you're making space for. He'd ask what you remove from yourself to make that space, because space isn't infinite. Creating space for someone else requires clearing space inside yourself. And you didn't just clear it temporarily. You cleared it permanently. Your needs went first. Not the loud ones, the quiet ones, the ones that felt small compared to someone else's pain, the ones that could wait, that could be postponed, that could be ignored, except waiting became permanent. Postpone became never. Ignore became invisible. You stopped knowing what you wanted because you stopped asking. You stopped asking because asking felt selfish. And selfish was a thing you could never afford to be. Think about the last time someone asked you what you needed. Not what you needed to do, what you needed for you. You couldn't answer. Not because you didn't want to tell them, because you genuinely didn't know. The question itself felt foreign, like a language you used to speak, but haven't used in so long you forgot the words. The empty room doesn't feel empty to you. It feels noble. It feels like sacrifice in the purest sense. You gave up your space so someone else could breathe. But here's what nobody tells you. The people you made space for didn't ask you to empty yourself. They would have loved you with your needs intact. They would have adjusted. They would have made room. But you didn't give them the chance. You cleared the room before they could see what was in it. And now the room is empty, and you're standing in it. And you've forgotten what used to be there. This is the cost of the empty room. You became the space holder. Now there's nothing left that's yours. Your relationships function. Your family relies on you. Your life looks full from the outside, and inside the empty room, there's an echo that gets louder every year, because the room isn't just empty. You're in it. You didn't make space for others by rearranging. You made space by removing yourself, piece by piece, need by need, until what was left wasn't a person. It was a function, and functions don't get tired. Functions don't get to want. Functions just keep operating until they stop. You're not stopping, but you're not living either. And the worst part is this. The people you emptied yourself for, they don't see it. Not because they don't care. Because you got so good at hiding the absence that it looks like wholeness. You smile. You show up. You hold space. And no one notices that you're not actually there. You noticed, years ago, maybe decades, you noticed that something was gone, something that used to live inside you, and you told yourself it was okay, that this is what love requires. That sacrifice is supposed to feel like this. It's not. Sacrifice is supposed to be temporary, a moment of giving that restores balance. What you did wasn't sacrifice. It was erasure, and you can't get it back by asking permission, because the room is yours, and only you can fill it. The third door, the crowded room. This room is full, overflowing, packed with everything you could fit inside it, so you'd never have to sit with what wasn't there. If this is your room, you already know. You've never been still. Not really. Not in a way that lasts longer than a few minutes before something pulls you back into motion. You're busy, constantly, productively. You have projects, plans, things to do, people to see, goals to chase. And when you finish one thing, you immediately start another. This looks like ambition. It looks like a full life. It looks like someone who knows how to live. Jung would see something else. He'd see someone running, not from danger, from stillness, because stillness is where the emptiness lives. And the emptiness is what you've been filling for decades. You didn't choose busyness because you love being busy. You chose it because stopping felt unbearable. Like if you slowed down, even for a moment, something underneath would rise up and consume you. So you filled the room with work, with people, with hobbies, with responsibilities, with noise, with movement, with anything that would occupy the space so you wouldn't have to feel what happens when the space is quiet. And it worked. For years, for decades, you stayed ahead of the emptiness. You filled every corner. You kept moving, and moving felt like living. But here's the cost. You've never met yourself. Not the busy version, the still version, the version that exists when there's nothing to do and no one to please and no goal to chase. That version terrifies you because you don't know what it would say. You don't know what it would want. You don't know if it would even like you. So you keep the room crowded. You keep adding. You keep moving. And the thought of clearing even one corner, of creating even one moment of silence, feels like annihilation. Think about what happens when you have an empty afternoon. No plans. No obligations. Just time. You panic. Quietly. You don't call it panic. You call it productivity. You find something to fill it. Something useful. Something meaningful. Something that justifies a space. Because empty space isn't neutral. Empty space is dangerous. Empty space asks questions you've been avoiding for your entire life. Who are you when you're not doing? What do you want when no one's asking? What would you say if you stopped long enough to listen? The crowded room protects you from those questions. As long as you're moving, as long as you're filling, as long as you're producing, you don't have to answer. But the questions don't disappear. They just get louder, quieter on the surface, louder underneath. You're tired, not physically, though you are physically tired. You're tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix, a way that rest doesn't touch. Because the tiredness isn't from doing too much. It's from never stopping long enough to ask if you want to be doing it at all. The crowded room gave you purpose. It gave you identity. It gave you a reason to wake up every day and keep moving. But purpose built on avoidance isn't purpose. It's distraction with a better name. And at some point, the distraction stops working. Not because you ran out of things to fill the room with, because you ran out of space to put them. The room is full, and you're still adding, and there's nowhere left to stand. You've met all three rooms, and something happened while you were listening, something you didn't expect. You didn't just recognize one room. You recognized all three, because you didn't just give up one thing. You gave up multiple things, at different times, for different reasons, and each sacrifice required a different room. But one room is bigger than the others. One room takes up more space in the architecture of your life. One room you walk past more carefully. One room you've organized your entire existence around not opening. That's the sacrifice that's still running. Jung didn't see sacrifice as a one-time event. He saw it as a pattern, a decision made once that gets repeated forever, because the psyche doesn't know how to stop repeating it. The locked room keeps locking. Every time you feel something big, you redirect it, process it, control it, put it back inside. Lock the door. You're not choosing this consciously. Your nervous system is, because it learned that feelings are dangerous and control is safety. The empty room keeps emptying. Every time someone needs something, you clear more space, give more, adjust more, become smaller. You're not choosing this deliberately. Your survival strategy is, because it learned that taking up space is selfish and selflessness is love. The crowded room keeps crowding. Every time there's silence, you fill it with work, with people, with plans, with anything that moves. You're not choosing this rationally. Your unconscious is, because it learned that stillness is unbearable and motion is survival. The sacrifice you made decades ago is still happening. Right now, every single day. You can just give something up once. You keep giving it up over and over, in small decisions that feel automatic, in patterns that feel like personality. And here's what makes this devastating. The thing you sacrificed didn't need to stay gone. The circumstances that required the sacrifice changed years ago. The threat isn't active anymore. The person who needed you to be controlled or selfless or constantly moving, they're not here anymore. Or they grew up, or they healed, or they left, and you're still living like they're watching, still locking the door, so you don't lose control in front of someone who isn't there, still emptying the room for someone who stopped asking you to, still filling the silence to avoid a feeling that isn't chasing you anymore. The room is yours now. It was always yours. But now the person who asked you to give up is gone, and you're the only one left standing in front of the door. So here's the question Jung would ask. What are you protecting by keeping it closed? Not who, what, because it's not about them anymore. It's about you. It's about the version of yourself you built on top of the sacrifice, the identity that only works if the room stays closed, the control one, the selfless one, the busy one. If you open the locked room, you're not controlled anymore. You're human, messy, unpredictable. And the people who built their lives around your steadiness might not know what to do with that. If you open the empty room, you're not selfless anymore. You have needs, boundaries, a self that takes up space. And the people who relied on your emptiness might feel betrayed. If you open the crowded room, you're not busy anymore. You're still present, available to yourself. And the silence might show you things you've been running from for decades. That's the cost of opening the door. Not what you'll find inside, what you'll lose outside, the version of yourself you built to survive the sacrifice. Jung called this the false self. Not fake, not performance. False in the sense that it was built to protect something that no longer needs protecting. You're not that person anymore. The one who needed the locked room, the one who needed the empty room, the one who needed the crowded room. But you're still living like you are, and the room is still closed. Here's what integration means in this context. Not opening the door all at once. Not flooding yourself with everything you put away. Not clearing the room or emptying the crowd in one dramatic gesture. Integration means acknowledging the room exists, naming it, standing in front of it, admitting out loud, even if only to yourself, that there's a part of you in there that you've been keeping separate, and then asking one question. Not should I open it? That's too big. That's too immediate. Ask this, what would happen if I cracked the door? Not flung it open. Cracked it, just enough to see what's inside. Just enough to let a little air move between the room and the rest of your life. What would happen if you let yourself feel one thing you've been controlling? What would happen if you asked for one thing you've been denying yourself? What would happen if you sat still for 1 hour without feeling it? You already know the answer. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing fatal. The world wouldn't end. The people you love wouldn't leave. The structure wouldn't collapse. But something would shift. A small shift. A crack in the door. A sliver of light between the sacrifice and the present. And that shift is what terrifies you. Because if the door can crack, it can open. And if it can open, everything you build on top of the closure is no longer stable. That's the real fear, not what's in the room. What happens to your life if the room is no longer closed? But here's what Jung understood that most people never accept. The false self is exhausting. Living in the locked room takes energy, constant vigilance, constant control. You don't notice how much energy because you've been doing it for so long it feels normal. Living in the empty room takes energy, constant adjustment, constant selflessness. You don't notice a depletion because you've been calling it love. Living in the crowded room takes energy, constant motion, constant filling. You don't notice the exhaustion because you've been calling it living, but you're tired, not the kind of tired that rest fixes, the kind that comes from holding a door closed for decades. And the door doesn't need to be closed anymore. You already know which room is yours. You felt it while I was describing it. That tightness, that recognition, that quiet certainty that I was talking about you. That's the room